Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Go Go Loser Ranger Season 2, Episode 9. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we have the opening where Fighter D is watching that old Ranger show that Uskobo's dad referenced last episode, and I guess it's almost supposed to be like research. It's just supposed to be like a solidification on his choice because he's still torn because he was at that cage prison with Hisui, and she's like, okay, like, you know, or do you want to be on that side of this cage, or are you perfectly fine being over there? Because like you could like come over and help me out, and he just simply walks away because he's not sure where he's going to stand in the grand scheme of things. Because what Uskobo's dad said last episode doesn't fully come in line with where Fighter D stands, so there was a little resistance, but now, you know, it's like, right, he kind of ended up winning the war of attrition against the Rangers, or at least it seemed like the case considering the general public turned against him. But now it's a free-for-all where people are getting turned into monsters. So, and obviously during that old TV show, there's a reference of like Red Keeper being like, oh my god, as long as we fight to protect people, we're strong, unlike you monsters where you're just kind of driven by like this, essentially a need for chaos and destruction. But yeah, D shows up and he's killing monsters, and not killing, but full-blown just knocking out. I mean, he basically bashed a ranger in the head with a brick. So for him, it's I'm back to both sides of it. He's thinking about what Chidori said to him a couple episodes ago about his hesitation, but it's like, nah, I'm not hesitating anymore. This is the line in the sand I've drawn. Everyone can get it. Even though like he was conflicted for a while, but it's like, right, I need to be solidified in what I do as a monster, and that means, once again, screw any and everybody. So I'll kill the monsters. I'll also deal with the Rangers. Once again, he's not dealing with them as definitively as he is the... he's not dealing with the Rangers as definitively as he is the monsters, but still. He ends up running into his old buddy from the Red Squad. But before they could even duke it out, what's his name? Was it Juji, I believe, and Ukiyo, but her name is like Kaede. Two of the monster protection people, which they're like, yo, shouldn't we be on the same side? But for him, it's like, yo, I'm basically here to crash all dreams. What the Dragon Keepers want, what the Monster Protection Society want, I'm here to crush all dreams except for my own, of what I want. So they inject themselves, and we kind of get a better look at what this monstrification looks like for them, stealing that word from Sweet Home. It was really interesting to find out basically the DNA substances they use for those injections are based on the boss monsters. I mean, it makes sense. Why not take the DNA of the stronger monsters? Because really the only other monsters that really are out and about, I mean, are like these kaiju looking things, but who knows what they're built from. But like the main members of the Protection Society get to enjoy the benefits of the boss monsters. Like, what's his name? Juji is Magiata. I'm blanking on that thing's name, even though they say it multiple times. The snake from a couple episodes ago, the snake boss monster, and the other is the octopus boss monster. And so that's really interesting, being able to kind of access their abilities. It turns out Kaede and Juji have a past. Like she was the one that was always the tough and rumble one that would step in to protect him type of situation. Who knows? It seems like they have a history, but who knows how far back that history went. I mean, that was at least them in high school, so they've known each other for a while. But she was a journalist who ended up, you know, writing a expose about how the Rangers invented the monsters, but that was never published, and in fact afterwards she got transferred to a different publication and department entirely. But for her, it's like, it doesn't matter my position, I'm going to expose this truth. But the problem is she was on the wrong side of the Rangers, so they came after her. But luckily her buddy Juji came to protect her. It's like, whoa, why are you acting so weak? You've always been the strong type. Don't let these people like kind of like what happened to the strong person I've come to know. And so that's kind of them being reunited. I wonder if by that point had Yuji already been recruited and then he came to recruit Kaede because he knew that she was in trouble. So, but using his powers as like the snake boss monster, he draws them into an illusion. And basically it's kind of almost like a Fall Guys thing because you have to go get the crown. You have to basically make it to the top of this whole situation. There's a few rangers trapped in here, as well as Yellow pops in with some people, like his main like right-hand research person and another dude. And just casually strolling through this like it's not that big of a deal, but it's kind of like, oh, like he seems so invested in this. Once again, makes sense considering that the Yellow squad is the research squad. It makes a lot of sense that you'd be invested in this. And he meets up with D and he's like, oh, wow, like, oh, I could teach you all this about divine artifacts. It's like, shut up, I already know about that. You know, it's like, oh, really? You know, maybe we can have an exchange of information about kind of what he knows about, I think, the monsters are specifically the boss monsters. But either way, he's running his mouth off about, you know, D not being able to do anything because it's like, right, you might have like your healing ability, which even hit their healing ability as immortal as Dusters are, even that can be wiped out obviously by divine artifact. Either way, he gets the upper hand and gets D easily, but ends up explaining where the divine artifacts come from. And this ties into Suzukiri's past, which we've kind of got small glimpses of. So my thought was, okay, maybe they belong to some kind of religious group or cult that is connected to all of this. To some degree, well, they didn't get into specifics like that, but what we do know is before more recent year, well, before all this, before the Rangers were able to use the divine artifacts, only a very specific group of people could, and that's the people connected to Suzukiri, whether they're family or whether they're a group of people who have no blood relation but are all special because of that. Like, they seem to worship like the divine, like the dragon gods and stuff like that. So whatever the case may be, they're the only ones who could use the divine artifacts, and then Yellow experimented on them to try and make it so that other people can, and because of that, now we have what we have. In fact, it seems like the divine artifacts themselves are specifically those people turned into weapons. So it's essentially like another franchise refers to it as soul weapons, where like the souls of people are, that's what makes the weapon so powerful. It's like, in its essence, it's basically a human soul acting as kind of the core mechanism to it. So it seems like maybe a similar things at play here with the divine artifacts. And it's like, oh, like even Yellow saying like he used up all of the people, he said, except for one, which are like, okay, it's got to be Suzukiri. But then when she goes into the lab, she sees that what appears to be like copies of herself, which then you're immediately like, wait, are we going to find out that like Suzukiri isn't the original? Did like the original, because at first I was like, was it your mom or sister killed and made into this and you were the only one that survived? Or like, I wonder, is this, spoilers, kind of like a, I mean, just because I used to C-word, clone, is this kind of like a Orphan Black situation or what? But I wonder, like, was she copied? Because it's like, well, we have a limited amount. Like, there was only a small amount of people who could use the divine relics, I mean, divine artifacts. So you have to, rather than killing their final subject, they just cloned her. So I'm wondering, like I said, like the Suzukiri, we know maybe she's not the original. Maybe she's a clone, if that's what that is. But all those women in those tubes look like Suzukiri. They look like straight copies of her. So not unless there's something else going on here. But it'd be interesting if, like, the last, like, maybe the original person they experimented on, or at the very least last person they experimented on was Suzukiri, but, like, before they devoured her up, they ended up, you know, making copies of her, and she wants to end all of this to kind of bring some kind of semblance of peace and revenge against the Dragon Keepers for doing what they've done. Which I think that's probably why she decided to join the Yellow Squad, because you are, like, the fundamental piece to all this. You're the one that concocted experiments. Whether everything was your idea or not, kind of seems like it was, but you definitely played a massive role in all of this. So, of course, she joined the squad that, I mean, for one, would be the one that is handling all of this. So it helped her from a position perspective to be, the proximity wise, but also like they probably bite her time until she can ripe her revenge against the entire organization, but probably definitely has specific beef with Yellow. The one that going back to the monsters present day, the boss monster that Kaede turned into shoots out all that ice, but also has a reflective ability so that no attacks can ever penetrate and would in fact get reflected back. But Yellow's like, well, there's a way around that. All you have to do is the attacks just can't be aimed at her. They have to be indirect attacks. So literally fired a beam and cut. It was probably like an arrow because it's a bow and arrow divine artifact, and ended up splitting one of his people in half, aiming for him, and ends up splitting Kaede in half, which you see her fall into the water and it's dissolving because it's basically acid. And she's like, where did I make a mistake? Did I not, because I didn't use the second syringe? Was it before that? When did like life kind of go wrong? Like what was my first mistake that sent me down this path? Even thinking back to like her protecting Juji back in the day, and and like after that was like was like her time as a reporter and getting like basically transferred, and her article being like suppressed and stuff. So you kind of felt bad because everyone's got their reasons for doing what they're doing because they see like the true evil that is the Dragon Keepers. Hell, even what's his name? Juji ended up using the second snake injection, and basically Magiata basically came back to life, which is interesting because he kind of references like, I guess there's like some essence of like him is still encoded in that DNA. So the moment like Juji like injected the second one, he completely lost himself. It's just like Home Dude's brother getting possessed by Magiata. It was the same equivalency. We never actually saw whether or not he got dealt with or not. Yellow was there, and him and his main researcher made their way to the top so they could leave, but we never got to see Magiata again, so I don't know if Magiata was dealt with. I can't remember, because I feel like he might have left them in there with Magiata. Because the illusion's still standing, so he obviously can't be dead, because if he was dead, the illusion would be crumbling. But his main researcher is kind of like, oh wow, I recognize you for what you are. You're evil. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to like keep up some pretense of like, oh, I'm doing this for the right reason or just some justice. But for her, it's like, you are an evil hero, but in a grand scheme of things, for the greater good, there is even a role and there's even a place for an evil person like you. Like, you are an evil that can serve like the greater good type of situation. So they ended up bailing after leaving all those other rangers essentially to their death. D had already gotten kicked out by then. It's like yet it happens yet again, and he couldn't get his full revenge against Magiata. But he is confronted by Uskubo, who's like, "Hey, you're a monster. We should be on the same side." But for him, it's like, "No, that's not how it's going to work. I'm here to take down your dad." And it's like, "Oh, your dream. You guys have been aiming for this day, and this is kind of your dream." And he's like, "Well, I'm here to kind of crush it." So sadly, him and Uskubo having to duke it out. I brought it up last episode. My fear is that Uskubo is going to end up dying, but who knows? There's also the situation with Hibiki and Hisui, where she's like, "Yo, are you Hibiki Sakurama?" And he's just kind of like, "No, that's not me." But then Uskubo's dad comes in and is like, "Oh, you're the one Double X told us about." Or X's or whatever. So that's going to be interesting to see, especially with the title of the next episode being what it is. No spoilers if you want to avoid the any preview or whatever about what next episode might be about. But it's going to be interesting, the Hibiki side of things there, but also, like I said, going back to the fighter D and Uskubo. It's interesting too because I was about to say too before we got to the post credit scene, Yellow was the only one we saw, but then like. But the guy that went with her die turns out he's still he ends up transforming himself because he had tried to apologize to Suzukiri, but she like ended up killing him. But before he could die, he had either had already injected himself or just injected himself right before he died. But it's kind of a moot point because Red shows up and wipes him out. So why he's here? Like, I guess he must have known what I guess, like, they figured this would be the time for Suzukiri to make her move. So they're probably all aware, being like, all right, let's see what you're up to. Or maybe he has other reasons for coming down here, because maybe he figured the Monster Society might pop down here to get whatever they need or want from this. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what the next episode has in store for us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.